All right, guys. Today we're talking about the Benchmade Bailout. And more importantly, this is a rather new one with the updated heat treat. Tim did add AWT scales to it, and this is one of the ones that is reprofiled into a drop point. I don't know exactly how they do that. They use a powered system. If they don't, however, you can see where I tested it, which was back in this area. Kind of shows on the coating right there. So I will say up front, I'm not sure if that affected the test results or not, or if they actually reprofile these this way by hand. Like I said, I have no idea how they do it, so I'm just throwing that out there. So I'll cover the sharpening on this, the testing, all the usual stuff for the most part except factory edge. This had already been used. It had already been sharpened once. So go ahead and get the cutting out of the way real quick, and then we'll come back and talk about all the good stuff. All right, now that we saw that cutting, we'll go ahead and start out with the obvious, and it kind of ties into sharpening as well. You guys take a look at that right there. It appears that the blade is way off center. However, I did check all up here and up here. We got the same gap on both sides. However, right about here where my pointer finger is, there is a warp in this blade, and it takes a hard turn that way. It is not quite touching the scale, but it's close. So, one knock already. This thing is warped. If you look at it, you can actually see it. It does start a little bit sooner when you're actually looking down the blade. But like I said, from here up, it's pretty bad. It's very noticeable when the knife is closed up. So, now on to sharpening. Reprofiling the blade shape like this, I knew it was going to get wider at the tip like that. It wasn't designed to be a drop point. It doesn't have the same distal taper or anything like that. It works this way. If you're not doing it freehand, keep in mind this is going to happen if yours is reshaped into a drop point. And before I talk about the sharpening, you can see the secondary is wider back here by the scales. It gets a lot thinner in the center here. You can really notice where the bend is. Looking at the secondary bevel, same thing over here. You're wider back by the heel. You get a little bit skinnier in the center there. Not quite as bad because this is on the outside of the warp. And then into your tip. So now that we have that out of the way, how did this sharpen? It didn't feel a whole lot different than the other 3V from Benchmade. I only did a video on one. I've had a chance to use a few of them now with the soft heat treat on it from the beginning. Didn't really feel any different in sharpening. It did form a burr super quick. And within the amount of passes I used for testing, I was able to get rid of the burr. And as I said, it was already sharpened once. So I went ahead and sharpened it, cut the edge off, sharpened it again, and then went right to the testing. Now, like I talked about in the beginning, because I don't know how they reshape these, I don't know if they put some heat into this or what happened. However, because it wasn't super hard or didn't take any extra work to get rid of the burr, I'm going to say that probably doesn't have much of anything to do with this. But keep that in mind when we go over these results right now. This is also supposed to be the updated 60 to 61 Rockwell heat treat on 3V. So how did it do? On the first test, which was the third edge on the knife, 95 feet fine edge, 43 feet working edge, for a total of 138 feet. Went ahead and sharpened it again, came back, ran the test again, and on the verification test, 96 feet fine edge, 42 feet working edge, for a total of 138 feet. How does this compare to the original run that I did? And if you guys go back to that video, the one I actually tested for the video was number 21, first production run. So the 21st knife that was numbered, the first test I did on a 3V Bailout, and that one did 101 feet fine edge, so a few feet better, 6 whole feet working edge, for a total of 107 feet. I would expect something that is supposed to be at a minimum 4 points harder should have done more than 138 feet. Now, there's a lot of different things that could have happened. It might actually be at their goal or close to their goal, and it just doesn't get a great heat treat. Maybe they didn't do such a good job grinding it. I don't know. I'm not at Benchmade. I have no idea. There's a lot of ifs with this video. However, just keep that in mind. 2 big things I look for: how does it sharpen? How does it deburr? And the next thing is, I've talked about it before, the actual cutting tells you the whole story, no matter what the actual hardness of the knife is. So I did talk to Tim. I'm not going to do a hardness test on this. It doesn't make any sense. In his use, he did tell me he wasn't very happy with how it did. If you had this and one of the original ones side by side, you probably couldn't tell a whole lot of difference between them. To throw another one in there, the Cold Steel Mini Pendleton Hunter that I have in 3V, that did 170 feet total cutting. And we did test quite a bit of 3V Cold Steel in the past, and that stuff was in the 60 to 61 range, and that is how I expected this knife to actually do. So to wrap this up, whole host of problems with this 3V, from being warped, just a number of things. Because this has had, besides Benchmade handling it, it being redone at a knife retailer in the drop point you see here, I can't say exactly what the problem is. Like I mentioned earlier, I wasn't there for the whole entire process of it. I'm just letting you know how it cut, and decent 3V is a good bit above 138 feet. I can tell you one more thing to add. The cold steel 3V sharpens totally different than even this example of the Bailout did. If you guys have an updated 3V version of the Bailout, let me know down below how it does. I'm curious enough, I may actually pick up one that I know has the newer heat treat on it and run the test and put it through some use and see what happens. I'm curious enough that I think that's what I'm going to end up doing. So be on the lookout for that in the future. If you have any other questions, comments, anything like that, drop them down below. That's all I have for this one. As always, I appreciate your time and thanks for watching.